Hello there, data storytellers and fellow SSMS Copiloters. I've been working with the product for about a week now, and certainly some things are really exciting even with it in a preview state, but a couple things that are a little bit weird. So to help people get a smooth experience working with SSMS Copilot, here's a couple of initial tips and tricks to help you to work with the product more effectively. On today's chapter of DataBard. DataBard, 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 hoi, hoi, hoi. So the first tip comes in from at least practices that I typically do with my laptop, where I go and I put it to sleep, close it, reopen it, and things like my SQL query windows get disconnected from their source, which also disconnects the Copilot from having access to your source environment. I know that for sure because of something you see in the chat window itself. Let me zoom in here. And we want to specifically take a look at this here, where it says Copilot and SSMS. This is not exactly what we want to see, because this SSMS Copilot here is still working. However, it's not connected. All right, when it says Copilot SSMS, not connected. That's really bad text color. Let's see. Well, you see, it's not connected. Okay, so here it's not connected into my database. It's still connected to the Azure OpenAI endpoint. But if I ask it specific context about my database, such as how many records exist in dim product, and it's going to respond to further clarify that. Okay, I cannot directly query to your database from the general chat context, which is what Copilot and SSMS is. All right, well, how do we fix that? Because this Copilot, part of its benefit is to give us context of our database environment. So how do we do that? I asked Copilot, and it actually gave me a response. I asked it, can you reconnect yourself to the current query window? It says I can't reconnect it directly, but however, you can open a SQL query editor window and connect it to your desired database, and then switch the chat context. So we have the ability, that means, to switch chat context. Let's go ahead and do that. So right now I'm working with a window called SQL Query 11. So I'm going to type in @ and there I have my context options. Currently, because it's the only query window I have connected, I could do Copilot and SSMS. I can also do SQL Query 11. So let's do SQL Query 11. And there we go. Now let's ask it the same question. How many records exist in dim product? Give it a moment to think. There we go. So, the first thing we have to make sure of is that Copilot SSMS gives us an option to work with the Copilot without the context of a database. But if we get in the situation where it's in that context and we want to give it context of a database, we can hit @ name of our SQL file, and it lets us point to a different database context. Especially if you're like me and you work in multiple database contexts on a consistent basis, this is a helpful tool to be able to switch between the chat. This is a helpful tool to be able to switch the chat prompt from database context to database context quickly. The next tip and trick that I want to cover is something that is going to be a little bit harder to demonstrate, but I'll showcase it as best as I can. The one advice generally that I want to give here is don't make your prompts too big. What I mean by that is, especially with Copilot SSMS in its current state with the type of endpoint that you can provision right now, you can't give it too large of a prompt because it's going to run into capacity limits before you can do anything. let me showcase that where let's take our particular database here, and I want to say generate 1,000 record, or no, let's make this really big. Let's generate 1,000, or let's do 10,000 records for each of the tables in the database. We'll adhere to data types as needed. Use your best judgment to determine what data belongs in which fields. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. So the first thing I actually have to showcase here is you can tell from the response, it's already saying, I'm unable to execute this task because it requires available write access to the database, which is not available in the current execution mode. So the first thing we have to showcase here is note that the default database context is going to be read-only. Regardless of the security that you have access to the database, the chat also has its own access. You can determine that by the icon here, bottom right here. This icon here, that was a really bad circle, but bear with me, indicates that this is read-only. So, just because you have access to write to the database doesn't mean your Copilot does. To fix this, we can hit a backslash, and this gives us the ability to change certain things about our context and our security that Copilot has. Main three ones that we want to note: read-only, which is going to be your default unless you change your default. RWA, which is read-write with approval. Here, it will generate scripts to be able to submit. Here, it's going to be able to generate scripts that can write to the database, but it's not going to actually execute anything without your approval. And then read-write, which means it's able to generate the scripts and execute them without your approval. We'll switch it to RWA. And that gives us the ability to change our context. And that gives us our ability to change our access for our Copilot. So once I have the correct security for my Copilot, I can go in and I can copy in my particular value here. So if you're like me and you're working with things in terms of a chat window, what do we typically like to do when we're working with a chat? We like to copy and paste. So in a case like this, I screwed up what I was trying to do earlier on in a demonstration, and now I've at least fixed, in this case, my chat did not have the ability to write. I've now given it the ability to write, and I want to give it the same prompt I gave it earlier. Well, I'll go ahead and copy this up here. Control C. What is this? Unsaved documents cannot be cut or copied to the clipboard from the miscellaneous files project. You must save the unsaved documents before cutting or copying them. Alright. Well, it wants us to save something. So what exactly is it talking about? Let's see if we can fix this. I'm going to hit save. What does that give us the option to save? Markdown files. So I can actually save my chat history as a Markdown file. I'm going to go ahead and do that in my demo here. And that at least saves a Markdown file that I can save for posterity's sake to review this down the road. Does that give me the option to copy it? No. Alright. So at least it doesn't want me to save that. Is it wanting me to save this query file? Let's try that. Okay, I've saved up my file. Let's see if now it'll let us copy it off. Survey says... There we go. So what ultimately it wanted us to do is that message is talking about the file itself. So when you're working with a query editor window, it's technically a .SQL file. If you don't save it off, it is just sitting in a miscellaneous folder. It's a temporary directory that exists in SSMS. If you're wanting to copy and paste from your Copilot in SSMS, you're going to have to save off that file to an actual file outside of the temporary directory. If you do that, looks like that gives you access to copy and paste from your SSMS Copilot chat window. As an alternative to having to save off your SQL files in order to be able to copy and paste from your Copilot chat window, another alternative you have to navigate your chat history is similar to a lot of other chat histories out there. Simply up and down arrows will let you go up to find a previous prompt that you've entered in. And then from there you can run that, same as you can with other chat windows. Now that my Copilot has write capabilities and I've got my prompt rewritten, let's go ahead and execute it, and let's showcase if you give it a really big prompt, as in you're asking it to do a lot at once. Okay, so at least there, first of all, a little bit vague, which is fair for this prompt. Create 1,000 records for all tables in the DBO schema. Retrieve the schema and generate records when ready. Alright, so again, really large prompt. Thinking about that, it's able to retrieve all the tables, retrieving column details. And now it's going to go ahead and do that. Now, we did this right with approval. So you can see here that it gave me this prompt. Running this query will make changes to the database. Are you sure you want to run the query? Yep, I want to go ahead and run the query. So let's hit run. So that's what the approval process looks like. And then this presumably will take some time. So let's skip forward in this video. We'll return once something significant happens. Alright, our process has been running for some time, and there's one gotcha that I want to make sure everybody understands. If you work with the write with approval option, and you give it a really big prompt like this, it's generating multiple SQL statements. That approval is statement by statement. If you want that additional step in doing so, great. Now you're going to be able to check every one. But in this case, I've had a couple run, and it's taking some time to do so, because I'm having to approve each one. So if you like that experience, go for it. If not, maybe consider the read-write option. Now it seems like we've run into an interesting situation. Asking it to do all of these functions it is trying to determine how to appropriately generate data for each of these tables. And it's actually challenging me on one of my tables where it's saying, I will reevaluate the schema here, but it looks like dim sales territory is a single column definition combining multiple names. This might be a schema misconfiguration. Can you confirm the correct column structure? Well, let's take a look. See, that's dim sales territory. Take a look at columns. Sure enough, there's something wrong is going on here because this table should be multiple columns, but it's not. Apparently, when I tried to feed data in here and I had it piped appropriately, apparently it didn't pipe appropriately. So something that I've got to do. So let's talk to it. This is a bug. Proceed to other tables without generating for dim sales territory. Yes. Alright, and this is where we get the prompt again, so we'll prompt and fast forward to see if anything else fun happens. Okay, so I've been trying to at least break the Copilot in a way that I know I have in the past, and it's not working. So I don't know if there was a recent update to at least its capabilities to work in SSMS Copilot or whatnot, but if I recreate the error, I'll let you know. But just maybe think about that as a general thought process. Don't make your prompts too big. Okay, so to follow up on the previous section here, it took me a bunch of tests on it, but I finally got a scenario that works out. This is what I've been wanting to show you since, like, the first tip in this video. Take a look at the screenshot here, and you'll notice this 429 error here at the bottom. That indicates that I hit a token limit on my Azure OpenAI deployed model. Because of that, I can't do anything further with the Copilot until that gets burned off, and then I have tokens available to work with things. Now, what sort of prompt did I have to give it for that? In this case, the prompt I give it isn't necessarily that complicated. It's just identifying that I think there's a situation where my demo environment needs a relationship between internet sales and salespeople, so those individual salespeople can get credit for all the sales that they helped with, and trying to at least identify a direct foreign key relationship between the two. So I just asked it to add a column to fact internet sales for that, and then logically to make a foreign key relationship between the two. It churned on this for a couple of minutes and then finally just presented this error and all the progress that it had made, which it was actually performing logic and was assessing what possible key values it could give and such. It was doing that, and then it just returned a 429 error. I don't think it's necessarily the prompt itself so much as it is the number of prompts that you are giving within a specific time frame. Again, this is consumption based, so the more you consume it, the more your tokens are accrued, and because of that, you more quickly get to a point where you run out of tokens and then you have to wait. I can further affirm that it was a consumption limit on the Azure OpenAI service itself too, because I tested it beyond that as well, and it seems like you do get to a certain point where you can submit different kinds of prompts to your Copilot instance, and you keep hitting this 429 message again and again and again and again and again, and it's just going to keep giving you that same message again until you have tokens available that you can use and present new prompts to your Copilot. In any case, if you hit this message, make sure you check your Azure OpenAI deployment. More than likely there you might need to make a couple of configuration changes to make sure you run into this, or keep it this way because this is part of what's helping control your costs for this solution. Either way, pick the choice that's best for you. Here's the end of our chapter. A couple of tips and tricks working with this, and I would assume some of this is just the way that we're going to get used to working with it. Other is, I know there's a lot of development still going on for SSMS Copilot, and we should be expecting a lot of exciting things from the product to come. But in the meantime, we've got a lot of fun that we can work with this now. Still more videos coming up on specific use cases, so stay tuned, more to come. Brings us to the end of the video. Again, thank you for watching. As always, hit that subscribe. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for future videos. I love working with SSMS Copilot. I'll be doing a lot more on it. And if you have any other questions about SSMS, Copilot, Fabric I'm making content on, or anything about the data industry, let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them in future videos. For now, I'm DataBard, and I'll see you in the next chapter.